The best thing about that gambling debt was when I told my wife that I needed to pay out of our account, and she asked how much, and I said that it was $400.
Oh
She looked
shit.
at me pissed, and then my buddies were like, "Dude, that's like a normal Tuesday for me. Why are you so pissed off?"
I took all my money out of like my account that my wife can't see.
that's a
I
that's a
did
heady
like
play.
I don't fuck with that shit.
That's a heady play. DJ, before we get started here, it is literally like our pre-March Madness podcast. We have a guest that we've been trying to get on for literally like a year now, and you're late.
I mean, lacrosse is a far way, and I'm just excited to have my little trash boy on. So let's get this rolling.
You mean to say let's get loaded? Because this is the Loaded Box Podcast.
Where we never finish first because we finish last.
Oh, thank you once again for tuning in. It is the Loaded Box Podcast. I am Ben Morgan. That is DJ Primo. And we are joined by a guest today. Let me bring him up on YouTube here. We've been trying to get this guy on the podcast forever, but he continually turns us down in favor of making love to his girlfriend.
It's bullshit.
So our mission today is to prove that being a guest on the Loaded Box Podcast is greater or equal to having sex. So a big welcome to Loaded Box Podcast writer and the founder of Goal Line Fantasy, Mikey Ostrowski. Mikey, what's happening today?
What's up, man? I'm really pumped to finally be here. I gotta say, it is a little bit better than making love to the girlfriend. I've already gotten off like twice already, so we're off to a pretty good start today.
How many dumpsters have you dove in today?
I don't know. I haven't been around you, so.
I gotta yell.
This is funny. If you're a loyal listener, you can tell that me and DJ are actually both live, and we're streaming in Mikey, and DJ's just screaming.
I yell that's what I do. I yell. It doesn't matter where the fuck I am.
Lean back, DJ, and then you'll be okay.
Rock away.
Oh, yeah, we are going to be talking NFL draft today. We've got 10 questions, one for each of the top 10 picks in the 2019 NFL draft. But before we do that, Mikey, why don't you go ahead, tell people what you do for Loaded Box. Tell people about Goal Line Fantasy a little bit as well.
Yeah, so I started off with you guys in Loaded Box, writing articles. I was big on the Stardom Situm last season. That went pretty well. Definitely like just shooting the shit, anything, fantasy football, regular football, life. According to DJ, I love talking about garbage and diving through all that shit. So that's what I'm about. And then I started doing goal lines just as kind of a fun project to do on the side, and just doing articles, weekly podcasts, all that good fun stuff every week.
Nice, love it. Well, you ready to dive into your first ever Loaded Box podcast experience with DJ and I?
Oh hell yeah, let's get loaded, man.
Oh, that's
like
well
that.
done. That's well done. Well, let's start at number 10. Obviously, the Denver Broncos currently have it. So the question for the Broncos, let's say that Drew Lock is either off the board or this apparent Broncos love for him is just a smokescreen. Mikey, where do you see the Broncos going at number 10 if it's not Drew Lock?
I honestly think it's unlikely that Drew Lock gets taken by anyone else. I feel like no one is that desperate for a quarterback. But like you said, I also don't know if it's all just smoke and mirrors with the amount of love they have for him. Really, the only other pick I could see that would be sensible for them would be Devin White, maybe from LSU. I know they're hurting a little bit on the defensive side. They could use a linebacker. He's probably going to be the best guy available at this point, but I don't see them not going Drew Lock at this point.
Follow-up question, where's your beer?
I like that reaction.
Can't find it, man.
Oh, man.
Today.
So for the audience that's obviously listening to this, it's like 10 a.m. on a Thursday, and DJ and I, as you heard, we just cracked our first Busch Lights of the day. Cheers for the YouTube audience. But it's our March Madness party. And I don't know how familiar you are with what we do, but basically Thursday through, I would say Saturday night, because we tend to take it pretty easy on Sunday. We literally just get loaded, we eat terrible food, we indulge in tons of basketball. Do you have any words of advice other than this Broncos business? Do you have any other words of advice? I mean, you're a pretty young guy. You can handle your own. What should we do as like 30-year-olds just to try to keep us young, or at least keep us alive?
Well, first things first, if we're talking March Madness, you got to pick Duke, or else you're going to be pulling your hair out.
Don't say that to DJ with his Carolina hat on.
Oh boy. Good luck. Good luck with that one, man.
Don't need it.
You know what? You can't get hungover if you don't stop.
Boom.
That's a fact.
That might be the hashtag of the weekend.
One year I didn't stop, and I looked like an Ethiopian. It was like the most famished I've ever been in my entire life. And everybody
won't stop. Keep drinking.
Everybody thought I was dead.
DJ's already a pretty slender build guy. He literally looked like he was like a crawling, like just a structure of bones that were just in a bag of like light skin. It's ridiculous. DJ, do you have any feelings on the whole Denver Broncos thing if Drew Lock's off the board, or do you think he's their guy?
I've moved on.
Let's move on to the Buffalo Bills. So the Bills, so far in free agency, they've signed a trio of receivers: Cole Beasley, John Brown, and Andre Roberts. So at this point, they basically have those guys to go along with Zay Jones and Robert Foster. Mikey, any chance they use number 9 overall on a bigger wide receiver, say DK Metcalf, the biggest wide receiver anyone's ever seen? Or do you think they look in another direction since they've already added 3 receivers in free agency?
Well, DK Metcalf is as big as a house.
Yes. He's bigger than his apartment. We could live inside of DK Metcalf.
Seriously, dude's like a giant. I think they very well could go DK Metcalf if he's still there. He seems just different. You know, he tore up the combine. He's just an athletic freak. He's obviously got a good pair of hands. And he's a really explosive player, which I think would go really well with Josh Allen and, you know, his big arm. Whether or not Josh Allen is going to be accurate with that big arm is,
right,
you know, yet to be seen. If they don't go DK Metcalf, I think it's got to be Ed Oliver from Houston, maybe.
Yeah.
Improve the defense a little bit. But, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go DK.
Right. I originally had DK in my mock, and I did my first mock prior to free agency, and then they signed all these receivers. But I don't want to say they signed to the same receiver 3 times, but all these guys are pretty tiny. And DK Metcalf just has that receiver build that a guy like DJ looks for. DJ is a sizist when it comes to wide receivers. He likes like the Terrell Owens, Larry Fitzgerald, like the bigger guys. Like that's kind of like your receiver.
Kelvin Johnson.
Perfect. Julio Jones, those kind of guys. So I'm still not opposed to it, but I think when my next one comes out, I'm going to look a little bit more into a guy like Ed Oliver because I think that definitely makes sense as well. DJ, what do you have for thoughts on that?
Here's my thing. I look at their cast of wide receivers, and they look like the Dolphins of last year. They're just grabbing a bunch of like average guys that are like good fill-in wide receivers, but they're not the top guy. You've got Josh Allen
on the table.
You've got Josh Allen. You've got Josh Allen. 1 year into it, you want to try to make him look better, see what you have. So I feel like you have to add that top wide receiver, whether that's DK Metcalf. The only thing I'm worried about with DK Metcalf, I've talked about, is he cannot move side to side. So
I thought you were talking about his inevitable 4-game suspension.
In his 4-game suspension, but I also don't know if he can run left or right. I think he might just be able to run straight. So we'll see.
I can't wait. I bet the audience right now has to play like literally like DJ on their volume control right now. I feel like you were just screaming.
I don't give a fuck.
No fucks given. All right, let's move on to number 8.
Shit,
it's the Detroit Lions. So the majority of the holes on the Lions are basically on the defensive side of the ball. Mikey, what percentage chance do you give the Lions on going offense at number 8? And if you think that they do go offense, what position do you think they might target?
I gotta say 0% chance. I mean, their defense was just, I don't want to say abysmal, but pretty damn close to it last year. You know, they've got a pretty defensive mind head coach, and he wants to see that improve. I'm going to go ahead and say they're going to get someone for their line, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them go out, grab a guy like DeAndre Baker for corner.
Yeah. I actually originally, I've got him going defense. I've got him going Devin White at that spot at number 8 right now. I originally saw some mock drafts that had them taking one of the Iowa tight ends, but then they just signed Jesse James. So it's like, are you really going to sign a free agent tight end? I think Jesse James is in his like mid-20s. He's a pretty young guy, early 20s. I don't really see him going that route anymore. I, at this point, think the Lions maybe would potentially trade out. Otherwise, man, Devin White at linebacker, I think he totally improves that unit. So I don't know if I want to say all out 0%, but man, it's like 5% chance they go on offense. DJ, how do you feel about that?
I would project them to go either edge, not that they lost Ziggy Ansah, or a guy like Devin White as well. I wasn't really listening that closely to what you said because March Madness is in full effect and everybody's texting me about fucking brackets and money, so that's just what I'm going to say there. We've talked about the Lions already, too.
Yeah, DJ and I have done a thorough kind of overview of the offseason for the Lions. So if you want to check that out, go through our old podcast. We'll definitely have one segment that's entirely, I think I even labeled it in the title. So made it easy for you.
Before we move on, I got to say, I do agree with you. I initially thought they would be going tight end here too. But, a couple weeks ago or a week ago, whenever the fuck it was, Jesse James, signs with Detroit. And now it's like, okay, their offense is actually, quote unquote, complete besides a decent offensive line.
Right.
They got the 2 receivers. They have the tight end now. Kerryon Johnson's going to be an awesome, running back. And Matt Stafford is average.
That's what everyone feels like.
Who was that? Who was the Dolphin killer last year? The tight end. He probably isn't on their team anymore.
No, screw that guy. That's what scares me though about like the whole
Michael
tight end
Roberts.
thing. Michael Roberts. The whole Jesse James thing, like I like that signing, but I also look at a guy like Stafford who basically did 0 with Eric Ebron, and here everyone thought like Eric Ebron was this huge issue. He goes to the Colts and leads all NFL tight ends in touchdowns. So it's like, does Matt Stafford does he just not target the tight end position, or how's that? I don't know how to kind of fathom that.
To me, it's kind of like, obviously he's not the same quarterback as Aaron Rodgers, but he has that downfield mentality that Aaron Rodgers has. And honestly, Aaron Rodgers just doesn't like support tight ends that well. That's why I hate anybody telling the Packers to take a fucking tight end in the first round. And I feel like that's the same kind of Stafford mentality. He wants to throw it downfield outside the numbers.
Yeah, potentially. Let's look at number 7, the Jaguars. All right, so you've got these, I guess, 4 players. You got Juwan Taylor, DK Metcalf, and both Iowa tight ends on the board at number 7. Which route do you think would be best for them to go after their signing of Nick Foles?
I like them taking Hawkinson, tight end.
Nice.
I like him because he's kind of the best of both worlds. He's got a decent pair of hands. He knows how to block. They're teetering between taking the receiver and taking the O-lineman. Just take the best of both worlds and take the tight end.
Yeah, DJ, do you have feelings on Jaguars?
You know what I feel about tight ends?
I know exactly how you feel about
I fucking hate tight ends. Like, I'm not going to mock draft a tight end in the first round. I can guarantee you that. I've got nothing.
My theory here on the Jaguars, right now I've got them taking Juwan Taylor. I like what Mikey said, though. It's like, if they have this great defense already, you might as well, if you just got Nick Foles, you might kind of think that this is your window. This is your time to compete with those guys. So yeah, taking the tight end makes total sense. Remember, Marquise Lee's going to be back on the outside. That should help. But yeah, in regards to tight end position, they really have no one. And I feel like any of those Iowa guys can step in and maybe not be like all-out game changers, but they can be enough of a difference maker and provide another offensive weapon that I think that Foles can use. The biggest question that surrounds them for me, how the hell is this whole Leonard Fournette thing going to play out? And if he is healthy, if he comes back to himself, then I sort of feel like, well, maybe Juwan Taylor is the right answer here because he's going to be able to help immediately. And then he's like in a perfect world, he's your 8 to 10 year window of an offensive tackle. Like you'll have him for that long. So at this point, they may not even just want to draft for need. Just go best player available and just see what happens with it.
I could also see them being a great trade back candidate.
Yeah.
I mean, if Fournette stays there, they need to add probably more draft picks, and I don't think there's any like super high need. I mean, wide receiver is one of those, tackles one of those, but I feel like they could drop back and get one of those offensive linemen later if they wanted to. So they could be a great candidate to trade back in the draft for somebody who's trying to come up and get
that quarterback.
Dwayne Haskins or something like that.
Absolutely. Speaking of Dwayne Haskins, let's talk about the Giants because that's a big rumor for them. So number 6. So quarterback obviously seems like a likely target for them at 6. But with the Giants making moves that would kind of suggest they aren't in a total rebuild and anything at this point seems possible, let's say they do end up making a move for a quarterback this offseason to join Eli at least. Mikey, who's your pick between Kyler Murray, Dwayne Haskins or Josh Rosen as best fit for the Giants?
Between the three of them, I would probably go with Haskins. He just seems to fit the bill the best in terms of how the Giants already play. Although I do have to say, I'm from North Jersey. I'm not a Giants fan. I'm actually a Carolina Panthers fan for some reason, but I live in Giants territory, and I don't think they're going to go quarterback here.
Right.
And it's astonishing. But I think they're gonna just. I think they might be the ones to take Jawan Taylor and just beef up their offensive line, and that's all anyone can talk about up here because Dave Gettleman is a shit GM, and he is going to continuously screw this team over and over and over again. So in a perfect world, they're going to take Haskins. In real world, they're probably going to take an offensive lineman.
I think that the least surprising move would be the most surprising move for the Giants. There's another one. I'm good at that. The least surprising move for the Giants would be, or the most surprising move for the Giants would be the least surprising thing.
You almost caught yourself up.
I got it though. I'm back on. So I don't know what the fuck they'll do.
I don't think they know what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's what's great about it.
I've listened to some of these Gettleman interviews, and he is walking around with this unearned arrogance that is just wild to me. He's just saying, believe in this plan, believe in this plan. But yet you're keeping, I don't remember who said this. Imagine when the Giants drafted Odell Beckham and how good he was right away. And now saying to yourself, this team will still have Eli Manning and they won't have Odell Beckham. In what world was that ever a possibility? Like, Odell was going to be the one that could extend Eli's career a little bit, but then really like come into his prime with the new quarterback. In my opinion, they should already have that quarterback. I think they messed up last year. That's for a whole different podcast. But like what DJ said, anything that they do like is going to be like this giant surprise, I feel like. And they are probably, outside of being a Dolphins fan, they are the team that I cannot wait to see what the hell they do, because it could just end up being like the most shocking thing we see.
Yeah. I agree completely.
Yeah. Before we move on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, let's talk about Pristine Auction, because they're a great sponsor and supporter of this show. They've got daily auctions packed with tons of stuff for the man cave. They guarantee their items as they all come with certs of authenticity from only the trusted sources. It's also affordable. A lot of people don't think you can afford it, but you definitely can. Quick and free to register, free to bid. You only pay when you win. And make sure you mention the Loaded Box Podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section when you register. So head over to, Loaded Box Podcast. Actually, though, if you go to loadedboxpodcast.com, we have a link to Pristine Auction. But if you want to avoid us, just go to pristineauction.com today. Mikey, let's bust into this top 5 here. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and assuming that the Bucs stay at number 5, and Dwayne Haskins, Montez Sweat, and Greedy Williams are all still on the board, who do you feel the Bucs would be most likely to take?
Out of those three, I'd probably go Montez Sweat just because of the matchups that Tampa Bay has in the NFC South. They need a guy that can get the quarterback. They need a guy that can, kind of take away a full side for, the Alvin Kamaras and the Christian McCaffreys. And I think he's going to be, the best option. I also think Tampa Bay would be an intriguing option for Devin White. I know we've talked a lot about Devin White so far. And I think it would be pretty wise for them to go and grab, a game-changing linebacker like that. But out of those three guys, I would definitely lead Montez Sweat.
I like that as well, and we all know that DJ loves getting sweaty with Montez. That's like his boy.
Well, now I'm worried that he's going to die of a heart attack. But yeah, I was going to say the same thing about Devin White because they just lost, what's his name? Quan Alexander. It was at San Francisco.
Yep.
So what better way to replace him than with Devin White, who's honestly, to me, like I said, the best player I watched. I personally watched on TV this year. That was, I don't know. That's the guy I'm most excited to watch the NFL. So that would be a good option for them. Cheap guy.
The reason I threw Haskins into this is because I think we might look a couple of years down the road and say Tampa Bay had this guy on the board and they decided to stick with Jameis Winston, and he had one failed year with Bruce Arians and they had to go to another quarterback. Like, I almost feel like Arians wants to give Winston a chance. He sees that potential that everyone's seen once with him. But at the end of the day, I don't know if he's the starting quarterback that can lead you to the playoffs or a Super Bowl without an incredible run game or defense. So I just almost feel like if one of those quarterbacks is on the board, I almost feel like you have to take that. Quarterback is such an important position, and I don't think they'll go that way. But I think this is a question that we're going to ask farther down the line is, man, why didn't they take a quarterback in this draft?
Yeah, I like that you point that out because I mean Tampa Bay is, I mean, for lack of better terms, just a dumpster fire right now.
It's all those Florida teams.
Well, they literally have nothing on offense besides Mike Evans and O.J. Howard, but O.J. Howard can't even stay on the field.
Right.
And then they have one, maybe two solid pieces on defense. I mean, this team is far from complete. And, you know, you're right. Jameis Winston is not a quarterback that can lead you to any important wins without a really, really strong supporting cast. So they got to improve something. So going Dwayne Haskins might not be a bad idea.
In 5 words or less, give me Ronald Jones's 2019 fantasy football outlook, because I know you were on me last year about being a little low on Ronald Jones. So I need to give you a little bit of hard time here.
I was so wrong about Rojo. I was so ridiculously wrong.
I was so wrong.
There it is. I was so. That's perfect. Say no more, Mikey. No, I'm just giving you a hard time. I've had millions of misses in my day. I remember that Ronald Jones one because you kept like talking him up, and I liked what you were saying, so I kept slowly creeping him up. But he just hit that like max for me, and I'm like, I can't do it anymore.
You know, I gotta say, last year in rookie drafts, I'm really fortunate that other people were listening to me too, because they stole him from me, and I could not be more grateful.
That's the beautiful thing about having people that you may be in a league with listen to you. That's
exactly.
You can feed them bad information. So maybe you were just ahead of the curve here.
Yeah, who knows? It was just this whole ploy to win my league, which I lost, by the way.
Joke's on us. Let's move on to number 4, another super interesting team that got even more interesting by the signing of Antonio Brown. But Mikey, man, I am struggling with words today. These 10 a.m. Busch Lights are just getting the best of me. What is the more likely scenario here with the Raiders, and do you agree with the scenario that you believe is more likely? Option 1, they stay put and take the best edge rusher available. Or option 2, they trade up to number 1 overall, take Kyler Murray, and it costs them number 4 and one of their later first-round picks in this year's draft.
Both of them are really good options for the Raiders, I think. But I think it would be better for them to just stay put. And my main reason for that is because I'm a Derek Carr truther. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's just a result of a bad offense and just a bad team. I mean, he has shown glimpses of being, you know, not an elite quarterback, but a pretty decent one. And I think that with Antonio Brown, and maybe if they can get, you know, they have Tyrell Williams now too, which is also big. I love him as a deep threat. If they can figure something out in the run game that isn't Doug Martin or Jalen Richard, I think Derek Carr has a legitimate shot to actually, you know, lead this team. And in terms of you know, a guy for their defense, you got to think it's going to be Josh Allen. I mean, I'd prefer Quinnen Williams, but I just don't see Quinnen Williams falling to them because I genuinely think Quinnen Williams could battle with Nick Bosa for the top defensive pick in this draft. So I think they end up taking Josh Allen and sticking it out at number 4.
Yeah, hard to argue that. DJ, what do you think? Get one of those edge rushers or cut the cord with Carr and start over?
I've talked about this multiple times. I'm a Carr. I like Derek Carr. I don't hate him. I think there was almost too much put on him the last couple of years, and they're starting to take a little pressure off with Antonio Brown. Maybe need to add a running back, but I think they need to stay put and grab that edge rusher, as he was saying, because obviously they had one sack last year.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, 13 on the entire season.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
The thing is, too, if they can stay put, like Mikey said, they added AB, they added Tyrell Williams. They're adding pieces around. So it's like, all right, let's give Carr another look. We've surrounded him with these weapons, and now we still have number 4, number 24, and number 27. You can legit do some damn offense, like building of your defense, and then maybe add like one other offensive skill player in there, or you could just go all out defense on that and just build from there. rather than trading away some of that and kind of starting fresh with a really unknown quarterback in Kyler Murray. So I'm with you guys. I think you have to go best edge rusher available. Hang on to those 2 second-rounder or 2 first-rounders from next year. Even if you from this year, even if you trade them, try to get one back for next year. I mean, you've got all this draft capital right now. I'm all about them not making a move, but with Gruden, we've seen pretty much anything is possible. He's not scared to trade anybody, and he's just wheeling and dealing at this point. So I don't know. It's going to be another interesting team like the Giants to pay attention to.
Are you in a sane asylum or in prison there?
Where are you, Mikey?
Dude, I have been living in a dorm room for 5 years now. I'm finishing up my my graduate degree right now. I got 2 more months in this hellhole.
You live in a dorm room getting your graduate degree?
Yeah, they I'm like a grad assistant here, so they give me free living, so I can't say no to that. It saves me a couple $100 a month.
You know what they say? You keep getting older, but they keep staying the same age.
Well, that's all right as long as they're staying the same age.
Exactly.
Nice.
But going back to Oakland before we move on, you said it would be a good idea to add an offensive weapon. I honestly haven't been keeping up with how much cap room everyone has left.
Mm-hmm.
But I know TJ Yeldon is still out there somewhere, and I think that could make a lot of sense for Oakland to go out, sign a guy like TJ Yeldon to have as a running back. They have Doug Martin, who can't do anything but run in a straight line. They have Jalen Richard, who can't do anything but catch, these dip and dunk passes. You get a guy like TJ Yeldon. He's kind of the best of both worlds between those two. I don't think he's a phenomenal running back, but I think he would be enough to make a solid difference on that offense.
Right.
I've seen a lot of Eddie Lacy on Instagram lately. You think John Gruden would just go throw back with him just because they like to do that? I mean, he's probably offensive lineman size at this point.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, John Gruden likes to do that thing where he gets all these guys that were really good 5 years ago. But, yeah.
Seems to make sense to me.
I kind of like that Yeldon thing. Like you said, he's a guy that's not going to break the bank, and he's versatile. He can do a lot of different things. Jacobs from Alabama was the guy that if he's potentially there in the 20s, in a future mock draft, I might have him go that direction. It feels like Gruden just loves to get his hands on these like skill players that he can do multiple things with. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that. But I do like the Yeldon call as well because of versatility.
Yeah, and there's definitely a possibility that Josh Jacobs is still going to be available there. I've been seeing on Twitter that his pro day didn't exactly go as well as planned, and he's sliding down draft boards. So if Gruden is high on him, still take him in the 20s.
Was it because of the 4.640 he ran?
Yeah, I think he had a 4.640.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough for the running back.
That's not good for a running back. You don't want to be doing that.
I don't think any running back in the NFL runs faster than a 4.540 anymore. I'm going to be honest with you. You see some of these guys breaking open field, and they seem to be slower than what they look in the combine. I don't know. I don't know if it's just me, but it sounds like Marshawn Lynch is probably running a 4.7. So
I feel like they cut weight and they train for these 40s like in their combine and pro day, and they do that. And then once they're in the NFL and they realize the pounding that they have to take, like they're just forced to put more weight on, and it does make guys a little bit slower. But the only thing I would disagree with is it kind of depends on the running back you are. Like if you're a Kamara, if you're a Christian McCaffrey, like those guys are like, but they're also more quick than fast as well. So Mike, you might be able to talk more about McCaffrey. He gets caught, but also the modern age of like the edge rushers and linebackers, they run 4.5. So it's not like we're talking like that big of a difference in speed the way it is. I think that's why we're seeing people get caught because defenders are just so much faster than they used to be.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I feel like a lot of NFL teams are looking less towards the speed and looking more for the agility.
Yeah.
It's a matter of not outrunning these guys, but being able to get away from them.
Move away from them. Yeah.
Exactly. And a guy like Christian McCaffrey or an Alvin Kamara, their agility, their swiftness. They just know how to not be near these guys.
Right. Exactly. Let's move on to number 3 with the Jets. So, Mikey, does the signing of Le'Veon Bell focus the Jets' attention from one of their obvious defensive line players at number 3 to potentially maybe they trade back and get an offensive lineman and try to build around Le'Veon rather than going with one of those defensive linemen is going to be there for them. But does that Le'Veon Bell thing mean, well, let's maybe not go that route. Let's try to go for this offensive lineman now?
Yeah, I mean, if they stick with number 3, they have to take Quinnen Williams. But I think it is pretty likely that they could trade back and try to get a guy for their offensive line. I mean, their offensive line isn't horrendous, but it's far from good. And they are going to need to get some help for Le'Veon Bell as well as Sam Darnold. They are beefing up that offense. They are doing what they can, and I do think it makes a lot of sense for them to trade back.
Right. I think that it seems like they're always trying to like trade their draft pick. They seem that team. And they also seem like that team that takes the damn biggest defensive tackle and one of the most like physically imposing. Like when they got Wilkerson, they got Sheldon Richardson years ago, and I think I'm missing another one as well, Leonard Williams.
Yeah.
But they always seem to be taking these players. Yeah, they still have him. But yeah, you add Quinnen Williams into that mix. You're working your way back to being the old Jets where you weren't going to run on them, and their pass rush was good enough where it was hard to pass against them as well. And now you're kind of building with Darnold. They brought in a couple of wide receivers, Jamison Crowder, and now you added like the most versatile offensive player, one of them in the league anyways, in Le'Veon Bell. So I like that idea of them going defense because you can obviously screw up any pick. But with one of those 3 offense or defensive linemen that are going to be on the board, they feel fairly safe. But with getting Bell, with knowing that he's not in like the tail end of his career, but he's like prime towards like the mid to like back end of his prime. Do you want to try to go with him and succeed with him there? That's why I asked the question, because I agree with you. I think maybe trading out of that pick, getting one of those guys, getting a guy. If there's a team that wants a quarterback at 3 and they can drop down and get Jawan Taylor, or they can get a Cody Ford or an Andre Dillard, like you have offensive linemen in this draft that aren't worthy of number 3. But if you can drop back into those early teams, that's not a bad way to go. So I guess that's my take on it. Mike, you got something?
I will say though, there is obviously no Quentin Nelson type of offensive guy in this draft.
Correct.
And that could be one of the reasons why maybe they don't trade down, because Quentin Nelson came in and he made an immediate impact on that offensive line.
Yeah.
He was a beast, and he's going to continue to be a beast. But a part of me thinks that if they trade down for an offensive lineman, it's going to be a guy, they're going to put him in immediately, but he's not going to fully develop this year. And it might not make the best impact right now.
Right away.
And like you said, Le'Veon Bell is, in his prime, towards the tail end of his prime. He's got a few years before he starts to slow down. Maybe the year taken off will kind of rejuvenize him a little bit.
Close.
But they are on a time crunch with Bell, I think.
Right. DJ, what do you feel about that?
I think the word might be rejuvenate, but that's all right. You're in college, I'm not. Who knows? I don't know. I'm just looking through the roster, and I guess I don't understand. I can't. Maybe they could go at the edge position as well. I mean, they're a team that really focuses on defense. They added Le'Veon Bell. Obviously, not grabbing wide receiver that early. They added Osamele on the offensive line this year. I maybe overspent for him in general because I think he kind of underperformed in Oakland. But I wouldn't hate Josh Allen there either.
Right. Oh, I think Josh Allen. I mean, it's cliche. You can never have too many edge rushers. And the thing is, because not only do you cycle through them so much, but injuries happen. So even if it's not like a guaranteed need, I don't think you can go wrong with that one as well. I'm kind of interested to see. I was going to start doing my mock draft 3.0. You can find 2.0 on loadedboxpodcast.com right now. I'm going to be working on 3.0 soon here. In one of the ones that I was working on, though, one of those rushers, whether it was Rashawn Gary or Quinnen Williams, I had one of those guys like dropping out of the top 10 as of right now, and it just felt weird. But this whole Kyler Murray thing sort of, I guess, leads on to that. I won't talk about Murray right now because we'll move on to the Niners and we'll get into some Murray talk here. But let's go with the Niners, and let's assume Murray goes number 1. Everything that I've seen so far basically has the 49ers going defensive line, whether it's Bosa, whether it's Williams, whether it's Josh Allen. Thanks for the help, DJ.
Sorry,
So, Mikey, if they don't trade that pick, is there any chance the 49ers stay at 2 and don't end up with one of those players being Josh Allen, being Quinnen Williams, being Nick Bosa, or is that like the most surefire thing that can happen in this draft?
It's a surefire. It depends because Arizona could really screw a lot of things up here.
Yeah, they can.
If Arizona stays with Kyler Murray, I think San Francisco either grabs Bosa or Quinnen Williams and calls it a day. And I think you can lock that in.
Yep.
But if Arizona, for some strange reason, doesn't take Kyler Murray and they go with the defensive guy that San Francisco planned on targeting, then maybe there's a call on draft day and maybe they do trade back. So it really all falls to what Arizona is going to do. If San Francisco's guy doesn't get taken by Arizona, I think San Francisco's a lock.
Yeah. DJ, what do you feel about that?
It feels like the Niners have been trying to add to their pass rush for fucking ever. When they get DeForest Buckner last year, they added D Ford this year. Yeah. Is an edge rusher after adding D Ford a guarantee for them? I actually have no idea after that addition. It seems like they're a little better up front now than they were 2 months ago. So, I don't know. And I'm full-heartedly on the position that the Cardinals still won't take fucking Kyler Murray. So, I saw him on like the wait-and-see bridge for that one.
The thing is with the Niners, it's almost like I agree with everything Mikey said. I think just based on what they've done in the past as well, remember when they were number 2 and the Bears were 3 and the Bears traded up 1 spot to get Mitch Trubisky? I think if there's a team in the top 5 that's most likely to trade that pick, I think it could be the Niners. And you have their roster up right now. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see what they would potentially do at wide receiver on this team and maybe try to target someone later in the first round if they can make a trade out of number 2. Because I like Goodwin.
Dante Pettis.
Yeah, I love Pettis.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're talking about a Kyle Shanahan-led offense here, and we saw what he did when he was with the Falcons. He had the duo running back, and he had always a legit trio of a combination of wide receiver and tight end. And he's got Kittle. He's got Goodwin.
He brought in one of those duos from Atlanta.
Yeah, he brought in Tevin Coleman. So it's almost like he's kind of that guy as well that wants to just collect skill players. And while wide receiver might not be a need, there were some rumblings that they were kind of in that Odell Beckham, Antonio Brown market as well. So I wouldn't be totally surprised if they trade out and maybe try to grab a wide receiver yet, just to kind of build for that future, add just freaking assets for a Kyle Shanahan to utilize later in their career, I should say, I guess.
Yeah, I like the idea of them trying to go out and grab a receiver if they trade down a little bit. They were obviously in on the Antonio Brown sweepstakes. They were in on the Odell Beckham sweepstakes. You got to think they might make a move for something like that. I will say, though, I do like their offensive weapons. I like Goodwin. I like Pettis. I definitely like George Kittle. Mm-hmm. Kittle's a guy that can kind of clear out the field and kind of give a little bit more room to Goodwin. Plus, now they're going to have Jimmy Garoppolo back. So, I mean, let's face it, none of the receivers on that entire team last year saw their full potential.
Oh, right.
Because they had Nick Mullins, and C.J. Beathard throwing to them.
Oh,
so,
beat-hard.
It's definitely not an outlandish thought to think they might go grab a receiver. But I think I want to say they're just going to keep this pick. They're going to take their defensive guy, and they're going to see what their offense can do with Jimmy Garoppolo.
And just be good with it. Yeah, take best player available, defensive line, whoever it ends up being that's left. I mean, and everyone's going to be left if Kyler Murray goes. But speaking of Murray, so number 1, Cardinals, all the talk since the Combine has been Murray to the Cardinals. Mikey, let's say that the Cardinals either trade this pick to someone else that wants Murray, or they decide to stick with Rosen and they do go with one of the defensive linemen. Outside of a quarterback, who do you feel like maybe they would target with that first pick?
Probably Bosa. If they're gonna avoid Kyler Murray and they're gonna keep Rosen, they gotta go Bosa because Bosa is Kyler Murray's a big risk. Mm-hmm. Bosa's going to be the only one that's going to really make any sense here for them, I feel like. But I don't know. I can't see them straying away from Kyler Murray at this point. They've been really outspoken about how they feel about Rosen and this, and that. And I don't know. It's a weird situation, especially since they just took Rosen a year ago.
Do either of you think that there's any chance that this whole Nick Bosa sitting out all of last year ends up backfiring? And not saying that he drops a ton, but maybe he drops out of the top 5 just because of like, well, he hasn't played in a while. It's a great draft for defensive linemen. Maybe let's go with the guy who's played. We know he's in maybe more football shape, and Bosa drops out of the 5. You give that any shot, DJ?
No, I think teams like that would just like a guy who's not having any more miles put on him the year before he gets drafted. So
Yeah.
they've seen what they need to see out of him. So they have the tape. And no chance, I don't think. No.
And the guy was a monster in college. I mean, he was literally getting it done from the moment he stepped foot on campus. And not saying that it's a end-all, be-all, and there's a huge correlation, but the fact that his brother is one of the most successful edge rushers. I mean, look at the Watts. TJ Watt, look at the twats. I mean, TJ Watt was productive in Wisconsin, but you mean to tell me that JJ Watt's success didn't be like, all right, there's a little bit in the bloodline there. I mean, let's go with this guy. I think that helps Nick Bosa so much. The same way I think Baker Mayfield's success is going to help Kyler Murray. I've said this on the podcast before. 5 to 7 years ago, maybe even less than that, Kyler Murray is not being drafted in this draft as a quarterback. But you have Russell Wilson, and then last year you got Baker Mayfield. And the success that they've had is just opening the door for a guy like Kyler Murray, not only to get drafted, but to maybe be drafted number 1 overall. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. And then like you were saying with the whole Bosa thing, I don't think he's going to fall out of the top 5. And to be honest, there's only one defensive player that I would even consider taking over him, and that's just because I'm super high on Quinn Williams. But they got to go Kyler Murray. I mean, the whole offense is just – I mean, this Arizona team is so bad. And Josh Rosen, you can't even say that he showed glimpses of potential. Like, he was just awful.
Ugh.
You just broke our hearts.
I can't have a bigger, stronger disagreement with the Josh Rosen argument because Sam Bradford was also awful. They have legitimately the worst offensive line, potentially the worst offensive line to ever play the game. Like, the Packers had the worst defense in like 2014 or 15, like statistically of all time. I'm pretty sure that was the Cardinals offensive line. So you're going to draft Kyler Murray and just gotta grab a guy who can run away from the guys that are going to be running free and end up like 20 yards. Ends up with a 20-yard sack instead of a 5-yard sack. I don't think that's going to improve anything. I think they should trade back and grab an offensive lineman because they are terrible up front. Terrible.
I mean, I couldn't disagree with that. Their offensive line is shit. But I'm just personally not high on Josh Rosen. He was my least favorite quarterback out of the big 5 that were entering last year.
Wow.
Yeah, and I like Josh Allen more than I like Josh Rosen.
Fuck out of here.
Yeah, well, okay. Last year I was a Rojo truther. I was also a Josh Allen truther. One of them worked out a little bit better, but it didn't pay off.
Yeah, Josh Allen was really good at playing running back.
Hey, he won me a playoff match. But yeah, I mean, it would make sense for them to trade back an offensive lineman. But I don't like Josh Rosen. I'm sorry.
No, that just
I love Josh Rosen.
That just broke all of our hearts. I was kind of with you. Like, I was like, Baker was my number 1, but I would probably say I was between Darnold and Rosen for my number 2. The thing that I couldn't get over about Rosen was just his frame. He just looked tiny out there. I'm like, this dude's going to die. He's already got injury issues. He's already got concussion issues.
Kyler Murray's huge.
Yeah, he bulked up to 206.
Yeah.
He's kind of like you now.
Mm-hmm.
DJ Dad bottled up. Kyler Murray bulked
Fuck
up.
it.
The thing that just gets me with Rosen is what DJ said. It's like, I want to give him more time because he can make the throws. He just didn't have the time, and he was thrown in basically, obviously, as a rookie. And would you just give up on Jared Goff right away? I mean, he had a terrible rookie season as well. And then you brought in some pieces around him. You brought in the right coaching. And the guy looks like a capable NFL quarterback at this point. So I don't want to give up on Rosen quite yet. I see what you're saying, though, Mikey. I'll get it. All right. I know that we're on a bit of a time crunch because it's March Madness Thursday. But, Mikey, before we go, tell everyone where they can find your your work, everything that you do right now on Twitter, wherever you are, you're everywhere.
Yeah, so on Twitter, you can feel free to follow the account. It's goal_line_FFB, so goal line fantasy. We also got a website. The link is directly into the bio. We just put out articles. We do at least a podcast every week. Right now, we're releasing, consistency rankings for receivers, coming out with the running backs starting in about a week and a half or so. And what that is we're just kind of breaking down, the real numbers that receivers and running backs are having. Obviously, we just came out with, for example, Tyreek Hill finished as the number 3 wide receiver in PPR, but he was only the 15th most consistent wide
Consistency
receiver.
rankings.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy.
Hey, well, that's what I'm saying. We're breaking down the numbers and seeing, who's actually going to win you games, but also who can lose you games. So that's some kind of cool things we're doing.
Hold on, Mikey, because that was the epitome of DJ. Like, you explained exactly what you were doing, and DJ is like, so DJ runs this March Madness bracket. It's got over 100, 200 some brackets, so he's kind of busy on a morning like this. So he definitely zoned out, but then he heard Tyreek Hill and the lack of consistency. So all he did, his contribution there, was to yell something that you've already mentioned.
Fuck that guy.
I love it.
Yeah,
It's a trigger word for DJ.
He killed us. But yeah, so that's what I got going on. So feel free to give me a follow there. Obviously, still very close with the guys at Loaded Box. Always have a fun time with you guys. Definitely want to come back on the pod sometime real soon.
Yeah, absolutely, we'll definitely make that happen.
Maybe.
I won't bring any Rosen hate next time.
There it is. Just bring a beer next time. That's all we ask.
That I can do.
As always, thanks again for listening. Check us out on Twitter at LoadedBox. Talked about the website earlier. Check that out, loadedboxpodcast.com. Wish DJ and I luck over the next 4 days. Our frickin' livers are going to be just screaming. And Mikey, before we go, DJ's going to do the typical closeout. But can you just remind us once more of your March Madness strategy in regards to drinking?
Can't get hungover if you don't stop.
Can't get hungover if you don't stop. We'll cheers to that. And with that, DJ, why don't you go ahead and send us out?
Cheers. Bye.